I grew up in a small mountain town in Vermont where winters were so cold, the air felt like shards of glass in your lungs. The kind of place where snow piled up past your knees and the roads turned to ice for months at a time. Most nights were quiet, too quiet. One night, during the dead of January, I learned that silence can be more terrifying than noise. It was a Tuesday just past midnight. I was alone in my parents' house, a two-story cabin that sat about a quarter mile from the nearest neighbor. My parents were away visiting my aunt in New Hampshire, so I had the place to myself. I was used to the isolation. In winter, everything was blanketed in snow, and the only sounds at night were the groans of the old wood as it contracted in the cold. That night, the moon was bright enough to cast shadows on the snow outside. I was in the living room, curled up in a blanket, half watching a movie and half scrolling through my phone. Then I heard it, a sharp, deliberate knock on the front door. It made me freeze. Nobody just drops by in the middle of the night out here. If there's an emergency, people call first. But I had no missed calls, no messages. I stayed still for a moment, my breath held, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. Then came another knock, slower, heavier. I stood up, moving quietly toward the window beside the door. Our porch light was out, so the only illumination came from the moon and the faint glow of the living room. I pressed my face to the cold glass, peering out. Nothing. The porch was empty. A knot of unease formed in my stomach. I considered opening the door to check, but something in me screamed not to. Instead, I turned on the small lamp by the couch and sat back down, pretending to focus on the TV, though every muscle in my body was tense. 5 minutes passed. Then came the crunching sound, snow being compacted under boots, slow, deliberate steps circling the house. I muted the TV instantly. My eyes darted to the big sliding glass door that faced the backyard. The moonlight made the snow sparkle, but there was movement, a shadow crossing the yard. Someone was out there. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, whispering my address to the operator and telling her someone was on my property. She told me to stay on the line and keep away from the windows, but curiosity got the better of me. I crouched near the kitchen window and peeked out toward the backyard. That's when I saw them. Footprints. They started at the tree line and led right up to the back of the house. But they weren't just normal footprints. Whoever made them had an uneven gait, like one leg was dragging. The stride was wrong too. Too long to be limping, too short to be running. The prints circled the house once, twice, 3 times. The operator kept asking if I could see the person. I told her no, just their tracks. But even as I said it, I realized something. The tracks didn't go back into the woods. They just stopped, right outside the sliding glass door. My skin went cold. I ducked back, heart slamming in my chest. The operator said the nearest officer was 10 minutes away. 10 minutes felt like forever. I stayed low, keeping my eyes on the door. The glass reflected part of the living room, so I could see both inside and out. The snow glowed faintly beyond it. Then the reflection moved. Something shifted in the glass. A shadow, taller than me, standing just on the other side. Before I could react, there was a soft, dragging sound, like a hand sliding down the glass. The tracks in the snow hadn't moved, but the shadow had. I backed away slowly, whispering into the phone that they were at the door. The operator told me to get upstairs, lock myself in a room, and wait for the police. I made it to my bedroom and locked the door, sitting against it with my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear her voice. The footsteps came again, slow and deliberate, moving along the deck outside my room. Then, silence. For 5 full minutes, nothing happened. Then I heard the sound that will never leave me, the crunch of snow inside the house. I froze. My mind tried to deny it, but there was no mistaking the sound, the soft, deliberate crunch of boots on snow. Only now it was muffled, closer, inside. I pressed my ear to the wood of my bedroom door. The sound was faint but steady, moving through the house below me. The police were still minutes away. My eyes darted to the window. It overlooked the backyard and was 2 stories up, too high to jump without breaking something. I thought about opening it and calling for help, but the idea of making noise felt dangerous. Whoever was in the house was moving slowly, like they were in no rush, like they knew exactly where I was. The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs. My breathing was shallow, trying not to make a sound. The first creak of the step nearly made me scream. 1 step, pause. Another step, pause. They were coming up. I held my phone so tightly it hurt. The operator kept asking if I could still hear them. I whispered, "Yes," without taking my eyes off the door. Halfway up the stairs now, each step deliberate, heavy, then silence. I strained to hear, every nerve in my body screaming. The silence stretched so long that I started to wonder if they'd gone back down, or if they were just standing there, listening. Then came the faint scrape of something metal. It took me a second to recognize it, the slow, careful turning of my bedroom doorknob. My whole body went rigid. The lock rattled once, twice, then a long pause. I could hear breathing, slow, steady, too close. I mouthed into the phone. "They're at the door." The operator's voice was urgent now. She said the officer was almost there and to stay put. The doorknob stopped moving. The breathing went silent. Another long pause, then a whisper, low, raspy, almost too quiet to understand. "I know you're in there." My blood turned to ice. The sound of boots on wood again, retreating this time, down the hall, down the stairs. The operator told me not to move until I heard the police. I stayed frozen, listening as the sound moved further away, then stopped altogether. A minute later, the faint wail of a siren cut through the night. Relief surged through me until I realized something. The siren wasn't getting closer. It was moving away. My heart sank. I told the operator, and she said there were multiple calls in the area due to a downed power line. The officer was delayed, and that's when I heard it. A new sound, coming from the closet. At first it was just a faint rustle, like fabric shifting. Then the unmistakable creak of a hanger sliding along the metal bar. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, a soft thud, like a boot hitting the floor.
It was February 1998, one of the coldest winters on record in northern Montana. I was 19, driving an old Ford Bronco back to college after visiting family. No cell phone, no GPS, just a road atlas and the promise that if I stayed on Route 2, I'd eventually hit the interstate. By midnight, I hadn't seen another car in almost 2 hours. The wind screamed across the plains, pushing snow across the asphalt until it looked more like I was driving through a frozen river than a highway. That's when my headlights cut across something up ahead. At first, I thought it was a deer. Then I realized it was a man, standing dead center in the road. He didn't move, didn't even flinch at the beams of my headlights. Just stood there, shoulders hunched, his coat caked with ice. I slammed the brakes, the Bronco skidding sideways until I came to a stop just a few feet from him. For a long moment, we just stared at each other through the glass. His face was pale, lips almost black, like he'd been walking in the cold for hours. I rolled down the window an inch. "Hey, you okay out here?" He didn't answer. Instead, he raised one hand and pointed down the highway, into the storm. Now, a smart person would have locked the doors and kept driving. But 19-year-old me? I thought maybe his car had broken down. Maybe someone was hurt. So against every instinct screaming in my head, I leaned across, popped the passenger door and said, "Get in, I'll take you where you need to go." He climbed in without a word. The smell hit me instantly, wet wool, frozen dirt, and something faintly metallic, like rust. I tried to make conversation as I pulled back onto the highway. "Car breakdown somewhere? You live around here?" Nothing. Just the sound of his wet boots dripping onto the floor mat. Finally, I asked, "Where do you need me to take you?" Slowly, he turned his head. His eyes were so pale they almost looked white. and in a voice barely louder than the wind outside, he whispered, "Keep driving. You'll see it." I gripped the wheel tighter. His words didn't sound like a request. They sounded like an order. The storm swallowed the Bronco's headlights, reducing the world to two dim beams cutting through white. My passenger sat stiff and silent, water pooling around his boots. Minutes dragged by. The highway stretched on forever. No towns, no gas stations, not even a signpost. I tried again. "You sure you're okay? Frostbite can mess with your head. Maybe I should..." He interrupted, voice flat as the snowblind horizon. "Keep driving. Almost there." "Almost where?" I glanced at the fuel gauge. Half a tank. Enough to get me to civilization if I turned around, but for some reason, I didn't. Something about the way he sat there, like stone, made it feel impossible to argue. Finally, a shape emerged in the distance. A narrow road veering off to the right, almost invisible beneath the drifts. A wooden post leaned at the turn, its old reflector hanging by a nail. The man lifted his hand again, pointed. "Here." I slowed, tires crunching onto the snow-packed lane. The Bronco fishtailed before catching again, headlights cutting through rows of skeletal trees. The road ended at a house, or what was left of one. The place looked abandoned for decades, roof sagging, windows boarded, drifts piled against the front porch. No tracks, no sign of life. My gut screamed, "Don't stop." But the man spoke for the first time since we turned. "This is it." He opened the door and stepped out, boots sinking to his shins in powder. No hesitation, no stumble, like he'd walked this path 100 times. He didn't look back, just trudged toward the house, vanishing into the storm. I should have left right then, slammed the gas and never looked back. But something about that house pulled at me. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the thought that he'd freeze to death out here. So, like an idiot, I killed the engine, grabbed my flashlight, and followed. The snow crunched underfoot. The beam cut across the broken porch, the warped door hanging open just enough to show blackness inside. I pushed it wider. The smell hit first, damp wood, mold, and that same faint metallic tang I'd noticed in the truck. My light swept the room, broken furniture, peeling wallpaper, a staircase sagging into shadow. "Hello?" I called. My voice felt small in the stale air. No answer, just the moan of the wind pushing through cracks in the walls. Then I saw the footprints, his footprints. They led across the dusty floor and stopped halfway, just stopped. No turn, no second set heading back. They ended in the middle of the room, and he was gone. People vanish on frozen lakes more often than you think. Locals blame thin ice, exhaustion, or the cold. But I know that's not always the truth, because I went out on Blackwater Lake one winter, and I saw what takes them. It was February of 2011, northern Minnesota, the kind of winter where the air itself feels sharp, like it cuts your lungs each time you breathe. My uncle lived near Blackwater Lake, a place famous for ice fishing. He told me it was safe as long as you know the ice, and dragged me out there one morning just before dawn. We drove his old pickup straight onto the frozen surface, tires crunching against a sheet of white that stretched to the horizon. Around us, other fishermen's shacks stood like lonely matchboxes, lantern light glowing faintly inside. We set up near the center of the lake. The sun hadn't risen yet, and the wind made a low, constant howl across the frozen expanse. My uncle drilled a hole, set the lines, and pulled a thermos from his coat. He was perfectly calm. I wasn't. I couldn't shake the feeling that the ice beneath us was alive. The cracks echoed in the dark like something shifting deep below. Hours passed. The sun climbed. We caught nothing. By noon, most of the other shacks were empty. The lake felt deserted. That's when I noticed him. Far across the ice, maybe 200 yards away, a lone man sat hunched over a hole. No shack, no truck, no gear. Just him, still as stone, staring into the water. "Who's that?" I asked. My uncle squinted.
Nobody fishes out there. That ice is too thin." But the man didn't move, didn't even flinch when the wind whipped snow across him. "Maybe he's stuck," I said. My uncle shook his head. "Forget him. If the ice hasn't taken him yet, it will." Then he looked at me, deadly serious. "Don't stare too long. You'll draw its attention." Before I could ask what he meant, he reeled up his empty line, packed his gear, and muttered, "We're leaving. Now." But as we loaded the truck, I glanced back. The man across the lake had stood up, and though the distance was impossible, I swear his head turned straight toward me. My uncle gunned the truck across the lake, the tires slipping on patches of glare ice. He didn't say a word, just kept muttering under his breath, something like a prayer. When we hit the tree line, I turned for one last look. The man was closer, too close. I hadn't seen him move, but he was now standing barely 50 yards from where we'd been fishing, still hunched, head cocked, staring. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that figure out on the ice, waiting. Around 2 a.m., I heard the sound, a faint, hollow knocking, like someone tapping glass. I sat up in bed. The window was rimmed with frost, the lake visible in the distance. And there he was, standing in the moonlight, on the frozen water, closer to shore than before. The next morning, my uncle was gone. His truck, his boots, even his rifle, all still there. No footprints leaving the cabin, just the front door left wide open, snow drifting in. I ran down to the shore, heart slamming in my chest. His trail was easy to follow, boot prints leading straight onto the lake. But here's the part that froze me where I stood. The prints went about 30 feet out, then stopped. No break in the ice, no hole, just vanished. I scanned the horizon, desperate. And that's when I saw him again. The fisherman, crouched far out on the lake, staring into a hole that hadn't been there yesterday. He didn't move, didn't speak, just tilted his head, almost like he was listening to something below, and then he slowly raised one hand and pointed at me. I don't remember running. I don't remember screaming. I only remember the sound, the deep groan of ice shifting, like something massive was pushing from underneath. I left that cabin the same day and never went back. The locals never found my uncle. They said he probably fell through. But I know better. The ice didn't take him. The thing that waits under it did. And sometimes, when winter nights are quiet enough, I swear I still hear that knocking on glass,